What's up, family? Pastor Don here. Listen, I am so excited that you are in the room. Welcome to episode one of the Leaders Den. Yeah, this is the place where servant leaders are cultivated. And so I'm excited that you are in the room. And I know that this podcast is going to be absolutely a blessing to you. So listen, before we get started, I need you to do me a favor, okay? I need you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it, get the word out there that the Leaders Den has begun. This is the place where servant leaders are cultivated. And so I'm so excited to share. This is episode one, and today we are going to be talking about servant leadership 101. And so, what that really entails is really diving into what it means to be a servant leader and also some tips and strategies to be not only an effective but a godly servant leader. And so this is just some things that I've learned along my journey of being a servant leader that I want to share with you. And hopefully it will help you and aid you along your way while you are becoming the best servant leader that you are able to be. And so, before we dive in, just a little bit about me. Again, I'm Pastor Don, and so I have the privilege of serving as the lead pastor of the Mount Moriah Community Church, LaGrange, in LaGrange, North Carolina, which is the sixth church plant of the MMCC brand under our apostle and senior pastor, Dr. Aaron B. McNair Sr. And so before going into pastoring, I served on the executive team at our sister church, MMCC Raleigh, under my spiritual parents, Bishop Aaron and Lady Ashley McNair. And so I served as the director of ministries. And so I oversaw music, youth, outreach, dance, and our media team. And so it was during that time that I really developed a love and passion for servanthood and servant leadership. And so in those years, I've learned, I've grown, I've made mistakes. And so I have been able to put together something that I believe will help other servant leaders. And also, I've started training the leaders of my church that I now have the privilege to oversee. And so we're going to dive into servant leadership 101, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll come out better than what you started. So let's begin. So the purpose of the Leaders Cave is to really equip secondary leaders to be able to operate effectively and efficiently in their calling and their assignment, not only in their local assembly, but also in the body of Christ at large. We are in a time where I believe that in order for us to effectively lead, we have to first be able to effectively serve. And so I believe that there is a need and a necessity for a space where servant leaders can come and be trained and be cultivated and developed to continue operating at their maximum potential in their assignment and in their local assembly. And so let's get started with this. Something that I always love to do is to begin with a thought-provoking quote. And so there's a quote by Robert K. Greenleaf that says, the first and most important choice a leader makes is the choice to serve. I'll say that again. The first and most important choice that a leader makes is the choice to serve. Without, one's capacity to lead is severely limited. That's profound. That's profound because for many people, we sometimes lead from a selfish perspective. We lead from a place of selfish ambition. However, in order to be an effective leader, again, you have to be able to be an effective servant. If you cannot follow, then you will not be able to lead effectively. And so when we talk about servant leadership, it's really not a church term. It was. something that was created in the corporate world or in the business world. And it was actually a term that was created by Robert Greenleaf. And so Robert Greenleaf defines servant leadership as a philosophy where the leader's primary goal is to serve their teams and organization, prioritizing growth, well-being, and the empowerment of others over personal gain, fostering a culture of trust, development, and shared success. So, in other words, when we look at servant leadership from a corporate aspect, the leader's goal is to serve their team. And in this, they prioritize the growth and the well being and the empowerment of that team, which then creates a culture of trust, development, and shared success. And so when we think about servant leadership from the church perspective, it can be defined as a style of leadership that prioritizes the needs of others, serving with humility and empowering those that they lead to grow and serve like Jesus. I say that again. When we think about servant leadership from the church context and what it means to be a godly servant leader, it's a leader that prioritizes the needs of others. So, a leader that puts the needs of the team or the ministry that they are overseeing above themselves. It's a leader that serves with humility. And it's a leader that empowers those that they are leading to grow and serve like Jesus. And so we'll get into that later on in the episode. And so there are five essential tips that I believe that every servant leader must have. Okay. There's five essential tips that I believe that every servant leader must have. And so tip one, servant leaders must be builders of the vision. Write that down. Servant leaders must be builders of the vision. So, what that means is whatever local assembly that you are connected to, as a servant leader, you must be a builder of the vision of the house and the vision of your senior leader. When we look at the Bible in Nehemiah chapter 2, Nehemiah has the vision to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. The gates and the walls of the city has been torn down. And this was not the first time that there had been an attempt to rebuild the walls of the city. But the Lord gave Nehemiah the vision. He gave him the burden to rebuild the walls of the city. And so what Nehemiah does is he goes to Jerusalem and he gathers the people together. He rallies them together and gives them his vision that he wants to rebuild the walls. And so the people had to assist with the vision because the vision was too big for Nehemiah to carry out by himself. And so the people had to grab hold to the vision, run with the vision, and help Nehemiah to work and build the vision that he saw. And so that is the responsibility of servant leaders. It's to catch hold of the vision of your local assembly. It's to catch hold of the vision of your leader and then run with that. Yeah, it's to help your leader build the vision. And so servant leaders have to be builders of the vision. My pastor often says that if you are not able to build another man's vision, then you are not ready for leadership. Yeah. And so you must be a builder and carrier of the vision. Servant leaders must be able to recite the vision just like that. If you are a servant leader that is connected to your local assembly, then you should be able to explain the vision of your house, the vision of your leader to anybody that asks. You should be able to recite the mission of your local assembly just like that. It has to become second nature. And so servant leaders have to take hold of the vision and be able to replicate the excitement for the vision to those that they oversee. The ministry workers and volunteers that you oversee as a servant leader, you have to be able to translate and transcribe the vision to them. They have to see you as a servant leader excited about building what your senior leader has implemented and put it into place. Servant leaders are really the protectors of the culture. They are the protectors of the vision. The senior leader casts the vision, and then it's up to the servant leaders to protect and replicate that vision. Not their own vision, but the vision of the house. And so everything that we do, how we move, has to align with the vision of the house. Servant leaders are not called to build their own vision, but servant leaders are called to build the vision and the mission of the house. So, again, tip number one, servant leaders must be builders of the vision. Yeah, servant leaders must be builders of the vision. Tip two, servant leaders must have the proper perspective of themselves, of themselves and their assignments. That's a big one. Servant leaders must have proper perception of themselves and their assignment. What you have to understand about servant leadership is that servant leadership is not about a title, prestige, or power. Rather, servant leadership is about work ethic, dedication, humility, and quiet strength. Yeah. Servant leadership is about work ethic, dedication, humility, and quiet strength. Servant leadership is the ability to motivate those under you by leading by example, not barking orders. I'll say that again. Servant leadership is the ability to motivate those under you by leading by example, not just barking orders. The reality is we all know people that lead from a place of insecurity. They lead from a place of self-comparison. And what leading from insecurity, what leading from self-comparison looks like is you having to let people know that you are the leader. You lead from a place of arrogance. That's not servant leadership. Again, servant leadership leads with dedication, humility, and quiet strength. Servant leaders are servants first. Yeah. Servant leaders are servants first. And if you have the proper perception of yourself and your assignment, you will understand that I am not worthy to operate in this level of ministry. I am not worthy to do anything for Christ. I am not worthy to do anything in church. And so once that becomes your perception, as we often say, you develop the mindset of, I get to do this. When servant leaders have the proper perception of themselves and their assignment, it no longer becomes a burden or a chore, but it becomes an honor. Yeah. When you really understand that God has graced me for something that I do not deserve to walk in, your assignment becomes a honor, not a chore or not a burden. Mhm. And so having the proper perception of yourself also means having a level of humility to say that, yes, I may know or be knowledgeable about this area, but I do not know it all. Servant leaders are also able to listen. Mhm. Any good leader listens more than they talk. And they just don't listen to respond, but they listen to understand. Servant leaders just don't listen to respond, but they listen to understand. And that takes a level of humility. The other aspect of having the proper perception of yourself and your assignment is understanding that I'm not the senior leader, that I'm not the pastor, and that I don't have to be in this role. From the standpoint of there is no monopoly on God, which means at any point that you begin to feel as though the church cannot operate without you being there, then you have now began to taint your assignment. Yeah. Servant leaders do not arrogantly walk around as if there is nobody else that God can raise up to do what they do. You may be the only you, but God can raise up somebody else to do what you do as well. And so servant leaders must maintain the proper perception of themselves and their assignment so that they will not fall into the trap of arrogance and misplaced confidence. It's okay to be confident in your abilities. It's okay to be confident in your gift and what God has called you to do. However, it becomes a dangerous place when you feel like you're the one that is behind your gifts, when you feel like you are the one that is behind the strategies and the concepts, because at that point you then snatch away the glory from God. Yeah, servant leaders have the perception of themselves and their assignment that says, if God does not download the strategies and the concepts within me, then I am not able to be effective in my assignment. If it was not for the grace and the mercy of God, I would not be able to effectively operate in my assignment. And so, servant leaders must have the proper perception of themselves and their assignment. Yeah, you must have the proper perspective of your assignment. You have to understand, I said it again, that servant leaders are servants first. Servant leaders are servants first. They are the first one to show up to church, not the last. They are the first ones to pick up a broom, a mop, or a vacuum, not the last. They are the first to sow and give, not the last. They are the first to be corrected, challenged, and pushed outside of their comfort zone by their leader. Because servant leaders must do the same for those that they oversee. My rule of thumb is this: if you want to see if a person has leadership qualities or abilities, look at their level of servanthood. Mhm. If you really want to know if someone is a servant leader or if they'll make a good leader, look at the fruit of their servanthood. If they are too good to pick up a broom or a mop as a lay member, then they won't be a good servant leader. If they are above cleaning the church and scrubbing bathrooms as a lay member, then they won't do it as a servant leader. If they can't get to church on time as a lay member, then they won't get to church early as a servant leader. And so we as servant leaders, we are the first ones to do, to go, to sow. We are the first line of defense. And so you have to have a pure and genuine why behind everything that you do. And that would keep your heart in check. As servant leaders, we have to ask ourselves why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we show up every Sunday or every midweek? If you can answer the why behind what you do, then that will frame your journey as a servant leader. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Once you frame your why, and if it's genuine, that leads to a proper perspective of your assignment and yourself that says, I get to do this. Let's keep moving. Tip number 3, servant leaders must have the proper perception of leader and catch their spirit. Servant leaders must have proper perception of leader and catch their spirit. What that really means is there has to be a culture of honor among among servant leaders for the senior leaders of the house. You have to properly perceive your senior leaders. As servant leaders, I'll say it again. I said it before, I'll say it again, that servant leaders, you are the protector, the defender of the culture of the church. Whatever local assembly you are connected to as a servant leader, you are a defender and a protector of the culture of that house, which means you are also the protector, the defender of the culture of honor for that house. Servant leaders do not talk down about their senior leaders. If servant leaders have a issue, they schedule time to have a heart to heart with their leader. Servant leaders have to have the proper perception of their leaders. It's similar to the Shunammite woman when the prophet Elisha came into the town. She told her husband that she wanted to build a room on the top of her house for the man of God. Okay, this woman, wealthy woman, goes to her husband and tells her husband that I want to build a room on the top of our house for the man of God. And here's what she said. She said, I perceive that he is a holy man of God. She had the right perception of the prophet. And as servant leaders, we have to perceive our leaders as holy men and women of God. If you are in a house where you cannot perceive your leaders as holy men and women of God, then that's not the house that you should be connected to. Because if you have the wrong perception of your leaders, then you will lead from a contaminated place. You will lead from an impure place. And so servant leaders have to have the proper perception of their leader, which also means you have to catch the spirit. The Lord told Moses to gather some people to help him bear the weight of ministry, and that he will place Moses' spirit on the people. As servant leaders, we are to assist our leaders with bearing the weight of ministry, which means we have to catch their spirit. You have to learn your leader, learn how they work, learn how they respond to things. I have learned my pastor. My pastor is someone that works quickly. He is not someone that throws things together, but when God tells him to move, he moves quickly while still planning. And so I know that whenever my leader assigns me a task, number one, he's not going to check in with me to make sure that I'm doing the task. And oftentimes he'll forget that he assigned me the task until it crosses his mind. He says, "Hey, what's this? How's this?" And so as servant leaders, we have to learn how our leaders work. We have to catch their spirit because oftentimes there will be unspoken things that we can pick up if we know our leader's spirit. There will be some requests that our leader won't even have to ask us to do because we know their spirit. If your senior leader is a person of excellence, then as a servant leader, you also have to be a person of excellence. If your senior leader has immense levels of faith, as a servant leader, you also have to match their level of faith. Even when it doesn't make sense, or you don't see how it's going to get worked out, when you don't see where the money is coming from, when you're sitting at the table and you are hearing the vision of your senior leader and you're wondering where the money is coming from, and they say, "Hey, I don't know where it's coming from, but I know it's coming." Your faith has to match the faith of your leader. Because as servant leaders, then our job is to go to those that we oversee and tell them the vision and tell them, "Hey, we don't know where it's coming from, but we know it's coming." And so then those that you oversee, their faith has to match your faith. Mhm. But their faith can't match your faith if your faith does not match the faith of your leader. And so it's almost a ripple effect. If those that you oversee, if they don't see your faith in the vision, then they won't have faith in the vision. If they don't see you carrying the spirit of the leader or operating in the spirit of excellence as your leader does, they won't operate in excellence. And so servant leaders are really almost what the corporate world would call middle managers, because we don't own the vision, but we help manage the vision. Yeah. And so servant leaders have to be in alignment with their leaders. And so you must have the proper perception of your leader and have their spirit. Tip 4: servant leaders must operate in integrity and excellence. Servant leaders must operate in integrity and excellence. We can look at the story of the 3 talents, where the master went on a faraway journey and he left his servants. He had 3 servants that he gave talents to. He gave one 5, gave one 2, and gave the other 1 based on their abilities and their capacity to handle it. Let me pause there for a minute, because that's good. The master gave them their assignment based upon their ability and their capacity to handle it. And that's what many pastors do to servant leaders. They place them in certain places. They give them their assignment based upon their ability and their capacity to handle it. And so servant leaders can't be jealous, because the reality is you may not be able to handle the assignment that somebody else has. But um The master, he goes away, and the servant that have 5 talents, he goes and doubles his. The servant that has 2, he goes and doubles his. But the servant that has 1, he did nothing with it. He buried it. And so when the master returns, the servant that had 5 now has 10. The servant that has 2 now has 4. But the servant that had 1 returned with the 1, with only the 1. And so he did nothing with the assignment that he was given. What are you saying, Pastor Don? Servant leaders have to operate in integrity and excellence, which means when you are given an assignment as a servant leader, you have to take that assignment to heart. You have to be integral in that assignment, which means, hey, I'm going to do what my leader has asked me to do in the spirit, in an integral spirit. And then I'm going to do it in excellence. The servant that brought back only 1, the master told him, the least you could have did was put it in the bank so that it could at least gain interest. But he did nothing with it. And so the master called him a lazy and wicked servant. All because he did not move in excellence and integrity. If you're going to be a servant leader, you have to be someone that's trustworthy. Because as servant leaders, we are oftentimes afforded the opportunity to sit at tables and to hear their inner workings of the church and ministries. Sometimes as servant leaders, we are fortunate enough to really hear the heart and the burden of our senior leaders. And so as a servant leader, we have to be trustworthy enough that we can sit at the table and what's discussed at the table stays at the table. We have to be servant leaders that are integral enough that those that we oversee can come to us with a problem and it doesn't spread around the church. As servant leaders, we have to operate in excellence that says, you know what, I'm not going to have do this. That because my leader trusts me enough to let me work this assignment, I'm not going to do it half-hearted. But I'm going to do it in excellence because that's the spirit of my leader. And so, our last tip. And shout out to Bishop Sherman Blandon and MMCC Wilson, because this is their motto. And so when I was preparing our training for our leaders at my church, this stuck out to me. The motto of Wilson is to live, love, lead like Christ, or some variation of that. And so when I saw that, I said, wow, that's also the responsibility of servant leaders. So our fifth tip, our last tip, servant leaders must lead, love, and live like Christ. Servant leaders must lead, love, and live like Christ. Let that sink in for a minute. Servant leaders must lead, love, and live like Christ. Our responsibility as servant leaders is to show Christ in every area of our lives. It's to model the character and the nature of Christ. It's to lead how Christ led. Christ led with compassion. He led with sternness. But most of all, he led with love. Which means we as servant leaders have to lead with compassion. We have to lead with sternness and lead with love. We can't lead from a place of arrogance or self-righteousness. That's not Christ-like. We have to love like Christ. As servant leaders, we are oftentimes tasked with handling conflict. And even in those moments of conflict, our love for people can't change. Even when we do not agree with their actions, our love for them cannot change because at the end of the day, they are still our brothers and sisters in Christ. And so we have to love like Christ. And then we have to lead, then we have to live like Christ. As servant leaders, our responsibility extends beyond the church. As servant leaders, how we live every day matters. What we do every day matters. How we live our private lives matter. Yeah. How we live our private lives matter. We have to live like Christ in and out of the church. Yeah. We have to live like Christ in and out of the church. Because if we lead like Christ, love like Christ, and live like Christ, then we'll be able to be effective and efficient servant leaders. And so, to just recap our tips for today, number one, servant leaders must be builders of the vision. Servant leaders must have the proper perception of themselves and their assignment. Servant leaders must have proper perception of leader and catch their spirit. Servant leaders must lead, love, and live like Christ. And servant leaders must operate in integrity and excellence. Yeah, those are my tips of what makes a good servant leader. These are not inclusive of everything, but these are just things that I've learned along the way of what it takes to really be a godly and efficient servant leader. So listen, that's all the time that we have for today. But listen, I still need you to do me a favor. If you enjoy this, subscribe, like, comment, share. I am so excited to be on this journey with you. Listen, I have some amazing, amazing things that are coming up that I want you to be a part of. So listen, connect with me. Instagram, it's Ontario Wooten, and Facebook, Ontario Wooten. I want you to stay connected because there are some great things that we are going to be dropping this year. Listen, again, this is the Leaders Den, the place where servant leaders are cultivated. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in for episode one of the Leaders Den. We'll be back with episode two, where we are going to be talking about check yourself, the posture of a servant leader. So listen, until next time, God bless you and have an amazing, amazing, amazing day. I love you.